And we're live. Welcome to The First Layer. This is the show that explores the world of 3D printing. I'm so used to saying that now, I don't know what else to say. Hey, tonight with me, this is Ask for
Happy
Help.
Sunday.
I'm with that guy over there.
Yeah.
There's
And
Brian
then,
Baker.
nope. I'm gonna get this right one of these days. How's it going, guys? Happy Sunday. As you can see, I'm technologically inept today, so this will be fun.
Yeah, it should be. Yeah. So don't ask us any really, really hard questions.
Oh no, do ask it. It might be kind of funny.
You might not get what you're hoping to get. Let's say hi to some people in the chat tonight. We've got Joseph Jolly. He is our keener. He was the first one here from Orlando, Florida. We got Dominic Versetto. Good evening from Cicero, Illinois. Cicero, Illinois, or Cicero, Italy?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
This is how organized I am. I don't even have the chat up yet.
And we've got...
Where's he reading this from? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we got Jerry from 3D Printing and Painting, our good friend down in Lost Wages. There's Andrew Hart from the UK. It's 1:40 a.m. there. Sorry, Andrew, but thanks for joining us. Brody Wallace is with us from Indianapolis. We've got Trevor Rickard, SPC 3D. We've got Robert 954. He is Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Wow.
And we got Guy the Jedi, Jason Peters, Gene Gerner, I want to say that's from Pennsylvania, and the Scarecrow is with us tonight. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our live stream. We have one more of these coming up on a Sunday night, and that's next week. I just want to keep you guys abreast of what's happening. Hey, there's Eric Anosti with a couple of claps. And... well, Eric, you can get pills for that. That's an old guy joke. Anyway, where was I going with this? Oh, yes, we have one more Sunday night episode coming up. That's next week, because next Saturday we are launching that big boy with two more that look exactly like it. Hey, there's Joe M. And we are going to have some fun launching rockets next Saturday. So Sunday we'll be back.
Fallen to. We can't even speak straight anymore.
That's right.
I know it's not provisions. I wish it was provisions.
God, I wish it were provisions. So we're going to take your questions tonight. Remember that the super chat is turned on, and that is always a big help for us when you use the super chat, because it does help our numbers. It helps us to keep creating content for you. All right, Dominic Versetto, is it reasonable to use solid bed mounts with manual mesh leveling, or are they better suited to ABL devices? I think they're better suited to ABL.
It's kind of both, actually. The reality is springs are used to kind of rebalance when your frame isn't 100% square. So if you can dial in your extruder assembly, basically, and if you can square it all up where your solid bed mounts will hold it in the best position, then you're probably never going to have to level your bed again. But if your gantry starts dipping one way or the other, obviously your manual bed leveling is then going to be moot, and you're going to have to re-bed level. So springs give you the flexibility to modify print to print, but if you do have that frame solidified and rock hard, then by all means, go solid bed mounts.
And I can't say anything different on that subject, because he's absolutely right, and I fully agree with everything he just said.
You can tell we've done this before. We've tried solid bed mounts. I've got solid bed mounts on all my machines, but actually on about half my machines, but they all have ABLs. I would say prioritize the ABL over the solid bed mounts.
I think I've only got it on one machine. Hey, Joseph Jolly.
Look at
that. Hey, hang on.
Super chat.
Thank you,
just
Joseph
got the
Jolly.
button working.
I do have it working.
But I will give you one for that too. Super chat.
There you go. We've got Joe M. He says, can I upgrade by only changing the motherboard? Yes, you can.
Absolutely. Now, should you? That's a whole other question.
Yeah.
But if there is a board upgrade option that you want to investigate, anything by Big Tree Tech usually is a drop-in replacement on most, say, Creality machines. And the reason I like drop-in replacements is because if it's not working right, you can pull it back out and put your original board back in. The moment you start going with other bigger boards and you start doing all the crazy modifications like I do, it becomes a lot harder to backtrack to where you started.
Yep. Always keep in mind that you are going to run into issues from time to time. If you're not familiar with the firmware that's used on a new board, get yourself familiar with it before installing that board, because we don't want you running into troubles.
And things can go wrong with motherboards. You know, I was going to bring this up at some point in the show. Now it's probably better than ever. I had actually encountered an issue with my motherboard this weekend with my SKR 1.4 Turbo, and I've been trying to diagnose big issues with my dual Z gantry on my big printer, and just nothing seemed to be working out. Nothing made any sense whatsoever. So I had a TMC, a Trinamic 5160 on the slot there, which runs in, I believe it's SPI mode, and it was working, but not quite right. So I finally said, to hell with it. I went and grabbed another TMC 2209 sitting around, which is in UART configuration. I changed all my jumpers to match my other TMC 2209s, and when I fired it up, I got a TMC connection error no matter what I did. I swapped the steppers around to make sure it wasn't a bad stepper. It just kept on coming in an error. So that says to me something was maybe wrong with the data line. So I pulled it out and threw in an LV8729, which is a non-intelligent stepper, and I set it to its 128 microsteps you can set it to, or something silly. And everything seems to be working kind of fine now. So that was a lot of experimentation, and if I didn't have those spare steppers on hand, your only option is to go the warranty route or think that you misconfigured something and spend 6 weeks in firmware. So this is something I've been kind of trying to bring up on our Facebook group, is make sure whenever your printer is working however you like it, write down a detailed set of what is working and how it's configured, whether it's firmware or wiring configuration or temperature of the room, anything. Jot that down, and when you start modifying, when things start going awry or are not doing what they are, take a look back at your steps and see what items you can backtrack on to get it working back at that original working state. Because modifications are meant to improve things, they're not meant to make things worse or keep it the same status quo.
Now, I just want to add one thing to that, is if you are going to do this, do it one step at a time. Make one change, test it. If it doesn't work, change it back. Make your second change, test it. Always do it in a step formation. Don't do it all at once and then get lost and go, crap, now what do? I got to set it all back to original. So just those are our tips for upgrading your firmware and changing things to suit what you need it to do. Now, I do understand that you may have some background, Joe, in building computers. This is a completely different animal. Bear that in mind. Building a computer and building a 3D printer, two very different things, okay? Just be aware of that. We got a few more people that actually showed up. We got Brad Pond from High River. He's just up the road from us.
Yeah, you're about 10 minutes away from me.
Yeah, we got our good friend Tim at KKP3D. There's TK3D's Prince from North Wales. Well, good evening and welcome. Hey, there's Peter Reynolds, my good friend. There's Loch Ness and High Tech Redneck, Rex Waldy, and TSWG, the Rocket Program. He says, my CR-10 LCD screen is lagging and is just pausing halfway through a command, like go to temperature heat nozzle. Is that an original build, or have you updated the firmware at any time? That would be my first question to you.
Usually with screen delays, actually, there can be a whole bunch of different things with that too. Is it running original firmware or is it running modified firmware? Because there's a lot of timing stuff in there. And for those of you who don't have a lot of history with Marlin, there was a good while there where the drawing of the LCD screen took up about 90% of the processing power out of everything available for Marlin. So it's not the most desirable way. Of course, with 32-bit processors, that overhead is shrunk down quite a bit. But on the latest versions of Marlin, it's basically prioritizing all the other processes before it draws the screen. And if there's something hanging up, for instance, if you've enabled junction deviation or linear advance, things that would take up more processing power normally, that will delay the updates, the screen updates of your LCD.
Hey, there's Pure Life RC01TJ. Hello from Mississauga, Ontario. He says it's the original build, he says. So
Okay.
if you've modified anything, then in that build, I would go back and unmodify it. If you haven't modified anything, I would look for the original firmware again and try and reinstall that. That might solve some of your issues.
And make sure that the cables are firmly plugged in on both sides. It sounds like a silly one, but electrical noise, especially with all the different power fluctuations that are going on within these control boxes. I've had screens do weird things if the LCD wire is not routed away from all your power switching wires. So just check your wires too.
Now,
it's always
before
a good
we
idea
move on to our next question, I'm going to show you guys something that was sent to me by an artist by the name of Daedalus. He's new to the figure space, and I want to show you guys this really quickly. I'm going to go to my camera. Let me just, there we go. Come on. Oh, let me do this. Focus. There we go. Look at that. This is just a sample, and you're wondering what all the holes are for. They're for different pieces that go into her hair that I haven't printed yet. This was printed on the Phrozen Sonic Mini, and I just threw some primer on it using Phrozen's, what do you call it there? Their stuff. Their resin. Yeah. So there you go. This is Poison Ivy from the Arkham Knights game. Now, I know a bunch of people are going to ask me about the STL. There is not an STL available for this. There will not be an STL available for this. What they will be doing is making garage kits for those people that are into doing models. So I thought it would be something nice to show off this evening. Let's go back to both Brian and myself. There we go.
Hey, everybody. Scarecrow's asking, have you tried Cura 4.7 yet? This was a good update. I'm going to say, yeah, that is a very, very good update so far. I've been, I was debating doing a video on it, but our good friend Shep over on YouTube here did a fantastic video breaking down the big changes, and the big one I wanted to cover, which he hits right away, is that tree support is no longer an experimental feature. It's now a drop-down option for you to select between normal or tree supports. There's also no more risks in selecting both of them at the same time. So go check out his latest video. I don't often recommend other channels' videos, but it is a darn good video for covering all the little details, as it is what I would consider to be a major update to Cura.
We've talked about Chuck before on the show, and to be perfectly honest with you, I have no problem sending our viewers over to see his information because it's always really good. Now,
absolutely.
Also, somebody else who put out a really good couple of videos recently was Michael over at Teaching Tech. Go check out his. If you're trying to calibrate your printer, he's got a great little setup now, and I really want you guys to check that out because it is definitely worth taking a look at.
I've actually been using his baseline G code a lot for my printer
recently I have too.
So.
Actually, that's his baseline G code on some PETG that you guys are going to see coming up pretty soon. So we've got High Tech Redneck. It says, I want to thank you guys for recommending the E3 Dip 1.1. I got it up and running, and it's so nice. Thanks a lot, guys. Well, thank you for being a part of our show. We're glad everything's working out for you.
That's a great little board, and I'll tell you guys right now, I'm not going to recommend you a board if it's a piece of garbage.
Yeah,
I got to censor myself a little bit because there is some stuff out there that is really, really garbage. It's a waste of your money. And Big Tree has been very receptive on sending us opportunities to test things, and if we want to test it, and if we want to promote it, we'll say yes. If we have no interest, we have said no to some vendors. So you guys are only going to see what we want to see. And, it's not for the sake of not wanting to try anything. It's just there's so little time sometimes to go and review all these different little things. And even with printers, when one comes into Richard for an opportunity, we say, do we really want to review another Ender 3 clone, or are you going to bring something to the table?
Yeah, right. It has to bring something to the table for me now. And I've turned down a number of printers, just so you guys know. just because they're just an Ender 3 clone, and there's nothing new to be had there. Why did I review the Ender 3 version 2? Because there were some significant updates to it. Now, what's going to follow from other manufacturers, I have no idea. We will be looking at a dual independent head machine here very shortly. So that's something to watch out our channel for. I'll let you know if I think it's good or I'll think it's bad. And, you know, we haven't published videos on certain printers that we have had in for review because they just don't meet our standards. And if they don't meet our standards, I don't feel comfortable recommending them to you guys. And I'm sure Brian's the same way. If it doesn't meet our standards, doesn't work on a variety of different filaments, then it really is not something I feel comfortable putting my name behind and recommending to you guys. Because if you go out and buy it and it ends up being a big piece of turd, then guess what? That's what it is.
We're getting phone calls, right? That's, you know, we get phone calls for when they're really bad. But yeah, I'm just going to quickly give a shout out. Thanks, Trevor Rickard, for your $5. Really appreciate it.
Always appreciate
and that helps us, you know, push away some of the companies. I hate to say it, but without naming any vendors, we've had printers that have come in and let us down. But what we do is we give them the feedback and say, hey, if you want to incorporate these changes that would definitely make it better, we'd be happy to re-review it. And then the other thing too is if we did give them that feedback and we posted that review and they did make it better, we'll never know. So we're very hesitant on prototype units these days.
Trevor's got a question. He says, I got a question for y'all. Tonight, I've been living with problem for a couple of weeks. My Big Tree Tech TFT35 V3 smart display says no printer attached and still allows me to move the X, Y, and Z axis. That is going to be something in the firmware. And it's going to be the firmware on the LCD.
It's actually going to be on the printer.
Nope, it's going to be on the LCD.
The LCD. Oh, you found that same? Okay, because there's two separate things. The TFT, I actually wish I brought my spare one up tonight to show you guys, but it's got a really cool feature in that it runs in both straight up Marlin mode as a CR10 display emulator, and it runs its own separate LCD. So the reason it has two separate cables is because the black cable, the 5-wire, actually is a serial interface back to the printer for that smart mode. And then, of course, the dual ribbon or / single ribbon for your EXP 1, 2, or 3 connection. But the no printer attached it depends on the firmware version you're right of the LCD, but if you are able to get it to move, that sounds like your base Marlin firmware and wiring is correct because there's a TX and RX pin.
Yep.
And if those aren't set up correct, then it's just not going to talk. Just make sure that the ground wire is going to the correct place too.
The other thing I would check is make sure that they're both at the same communication rate. So the baud rate has to be the same on both of them. A lot of the times what happens with these is that the baud rate on the LCD is different than the baud rate on the actual motherboard in the firmware. So make sure that is correct, and if that is correct, you shouldn't have any more problems.
Absolutely. Mark Martin's asking, I just installed BLTouch 3.1 on my CR-10 V2. It seems to respond correctly to the prompts on the screen, but when I select to level the bed, it goes to the front right corner. Richard, do you want to take that one?
You know, we were just discussing
How many
your
times have we
email.
screwed up this?
But thanks for putting it in the chat. That means I don't have to read your email, Mark. I can tell you probably what's going on here is have you adjusted the firmware for the BLTouch first and foremost? Because you are dealing with a CR-10 V2. You got to make sure that you have the BLTouch enabled. Otherwise, it's just going to see it as an end stop. And if it's seeing it as an end stop, it's just going to go right to that front corner and that's it. So make sure that you have BLTouch enabled in the firmware. You also are going to have to make sure you have safe homing enabled in the firmware, right?
And yes, you pretty much got it there. Now, safe homing, for those you don't know, is a setting that changes the homing position for X and Y to by default be the center of your bed. It's your X and Y build size divide by 2. And that's why it ends up in the center of the bed. If it seems slightly off center, it means your actual X and Y probe offsets have not been set in configuration.h. And I believe we've gone into detail with that before on our other BLTouch videos. but you have to define the Z safe homing to go to center of bed, and then you need to define your probe offsets to make sure that where it's probing is actually the offset that the nozzle is going to be. If you don't set that, you're actually going to have a really bad time with your bed leveling. Mark also said it extends the probe twice, but does not lower the Z and then just stops. What that says to me is that potentially your end stop wiring is backwards on the board. And this does happen with a lot of boards. With the end stop with the switch, it never really mattered what the orientation of the electrical switch is because it was a mechanical contact. So whether current flowed from wire 1 to wire 2 or wire 2 to wire 1, it would always flow when that switch closed. But now with the BLTouch, it provides the power down that line, and you need to make sure that your power is going to the correct contact. So it sounds to me like it's actually thinking it is always in contact, really. And that's what happens as your probe deploys, it'll pop right back in immediately, and then it'll move up 5 millimeters or so.
Yeah.
It'll move up that, and then it'll deploy it again, and then it'll pop back in immediately because it thinks that it's coming in contact. So just check your wires, and depending on your motherboard, if it is the stock CR-10 V2, it should be okay, but I haven't reviewed the schematic of that board to know if the wires need to be flipped. But just make sure you got a good contact with that. If you're not sure, unplug the end stop portion altogether for the probe and make sure... Actually, you know, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm wondering if it's even plugged into the Z end stop.
Because that would be plugged into the Z end stop. I think part of what's happening...
Send us an email, Mark, with your wiring.
Yeah, send us a copy of your wiring there, Mark, and we'll have a look at it, and we'll get back to you this week. So
that definitely sounds like a wiring hurdle that can be overcome really quickly.
It's a wiring issue for sure. It's not getting the signal correctly.
I'm going to tell everybody here my opinion on this is that regardless of whether or not your motherboard has a dedicated spot for a probe input, you should always use the Z end stop and enable Z end stop, or Z probe uses Z end stop pin in configuration.h because you know that end stop works off the bat. It's wired safely and everything. There's supposed to be some higher speed interrupts sometimes on them. I've never gotten them to work right, and a lot of the forums online will give you the same feedback.
Yeah, exactly. Brad Pond, he says, what's your guys' best recommendation for cleaning glass bed? I've just been using a Dawn dish soap and a rough dish sponge. Works well, but the effects don't always seem to last that long. That's the way I clean mine. I just put it under some hot water for a little while. What I do is I'll let the water run on the glass for a little while to get off any of my glue stick. And then I'll just take a sponge and I'll clean it off. Once it's clean, I'll spritz some Windex or some isopropyl alcohol on it and just give it a further cleaning, get any of my fingerprints, any oils, anything like that off it. Then I'll place it back on my bed and put a fresh glue stick down. And that usually works for me.
Yeah, Brad, are you using glue stick for your bed adhesion on your glass, or are you using something else? Because that could also vary your cleaning method. For glue stick, PVA, I believe it's PVA glue, and
it's PVA.
Someone will probably smack me if I'm wrong.
No, it's PVA.
So PVA is kind of like glue stick. It has a very low melting point. And so if you get that underneath the sink, it's also water soluble most of the time. So if you leave your hot water running on that for 10 minutes, if you need to walk away, it'll just rinse right off and your glass will be cleaner than ever. If you want to use that final Windex, isopropyl alcohol, whatever, to remove any surface sheen and get right down to that glass, you can do that too. If you're going to use a window cleaning product, actually I would probably say anything natural like a citrus, because you're not sure what other chemicals are in there to smoothen off the surface, which may impact your bed adhesion.
He says he's not using anything, so I would say use a little bit of glue stick, and I usually have some down here, but I don't right now. Use a little bit of glue stick, just the purple glue stick you can buy at Staples, same stuff that your kids use. Ohio
Teen Tech, good question. Do you know any good sites for printing on demand so I can make money with my printer? I haven't seen any companies that set up anything similar to the freelancing websites out there, but I do see a lot of people offering their services on Facebook Marketplace, on Kijiji, which is owned by eBay up here. It's like Craigslist. anything to kind of get yourself out there. I think you're actually better to self-promote your business, and whether it's showing off and through point of contact, because there's a lot of people offering stuff out there, and truth be told, the listings are pretty sad. And if you really, I'm kind of on a gray area about this, but Etsy is a great resource to list your services. I've found going through Etsy, to be honest, I've been kind of disgusted at what people are deeming as good quality 3D prints and the prices they're charging. So if you have some models to showcase on there, that please avoid copyrights, because it's just going to send you a bad way. If there's something you've modeled, or if there's something non-copyrightable that's on Thingiverse that you've contacted the author and have permission to print or use it to promote your service and not print, that's the best way to go. If you start using copyrighted characters and prints, usually the companies, they'll monitor sites like Redbubble and Etsy and all that, and you'll be shut down fairly quick.
Yeah, so just take your time, put out your advertisements in your local area. If you're at school, advertise on the bulletin board at school. Safeway always has a little bulletin board that you can put your little advertisement up on. It's free. At least it is here in Canada. And I'm sure there's lots of places. And Etsy's a great place. But again, take good pictures of the models that you're printing. Try and print them at a good resolution, a good high resolution, like 1.6, 1.2, and really showcase what your printer is capable of. Don't just do a 0.2 or a 0.3 millimeter layer height print. Do something that's really going to look spectacular. And you can take pictures with your phone, because every phone in the world now has a camera. So take some really nice pictures. Don't take them this way. Take them this way. Okay? And you'll always be able to showcase the work that you're doing. If you've got some painted stuff, throw that up on there too. And you'll start to get orders in no time. Trust me on this. And be reasonable about the prices that you're offering as well. I know for myself, when somebody asks me to print something for them, I charge $6 an hour to print. And that includes the price of the filament. That's my going rate, and I don't deviate from that.
And there's lots of calculators out there, and unfortunately, some people are going to be disgusted when you give them a 96-hour print. So just be prepared for that. Bear that in mind. I was just actually looking up some information here for Mike Cook Jr. Printing a 3-piece Starman helmet. First piece tree support fell over with 1 hour to go. Oh, I hear that. 1 hour to go. Second, ran out of filament. Why didn't my runout sensor work? Using OctoPrint and a Chiron.
That's why.
Which
OctoPrint.
Sensor are you using? Yeah,
doesn't matter the sensor.
Okay.
It's OctoPrint.
Yeah. So basically, there's two routes to deal with. Number one, filament runout sensors. If you are printing big enough things that requires a filament runout sensor, please don't use OctoPrint, because as many of my friends will attest to, a simple communication loss over USB can kill your entire print job and cause you tons of headaches of trying to recover from it. I do have some techniques that I'm going to go through soon, but for the time being, any kind of filament runout sensor should be built right into Marlin. We can go through the 4 or 5 settings you got to turn on there, and then worst case scenario, and this is something I haven't sorted out quite yet with OctoPrint, but if you have your filament runout sensor attached to your main board, it doesn't report, or never used to report back the same signal to tell OctoPrint that I'm actually out of filament. It's not so much that I'm holding you out waiting for future commands. But if you do go that route, the safer bet is going to have your filament runout sensor on the printer and not on OctoPrint. Does that cover you up, I think?
Yeah, that pretty much covers it. I mean, OctoPrint has always had a problem once filament runout sensors came into play. It, for whatever reason, it just doesn't communicate well with them. And it's something in the loss of translation. It's like French to Italian. There's something,
and also
they're similar, but they get lost in translation.
And Mike, if you're saying if it's plugged in and you get an alert on screen to show when it is out of filament, then it sounds like OctoPrint is not handling that runout properly. Now, there's a couple reasons that could be, but you need to look into the plugin you're using specifically, and you need to do a test print. So cut out about a 1 foot, maybe even shorter, 6 inches of filament. If you have a direct drive, or if you have longer, let's say a 2-foot length, put that into your machine, start a print job of something like a calibration cube, and yank your filament out and see what's happening in OctoPrint. See if it's even registering, first of all, that it's out of filament, and second of all, how it's handling that. Because the way it's supposed to work is it's supposed to take a look at the G-code interpreter and put a halt in the middle of your G-code. It's sending live to the printer, because the printer doesn't know. The printer is just receiving remote commands. So if you've pulled that out and it's still continuously printing without anything in there, then OctoPrint is not reading your filament runout appropriately.
Correct. We have Brian Bond says, hello guys, my second layer is hitting or too close. Any help? That sounds to me like you have an offset issue. Normally your offset, you shouldn't be hitting the second layer as it's trying to do the layer above it. It should actually be laying down on top of it. So something is wrong with your Z. Is coming down a little too low. So I'm going to say that that's probably going to be your offset, is something screwy there.
So yeah, there's 2 ways of dealing with that. One, which is what I like to call the lazy man method, is enable baby stepping. Always enable baby stepping on your printer firmware, because you can seriously cheese the functionality of your machine. Even if you borked up the first layer, you can live calibrate your Z. Now, the real fix to that is getting that first layer height dialed in. And everybody in their right mind has a video on it. But for instance, with myself, I've got these textured PEI sheets, and I can tell when it's too close, because not only is the width of the line getting quite wide, a lot wider than the base of the nozzle, I'm also seeing a lot of rippling where it's filling in the cracks in between all my pieces, and yet it's right at that top surface level. So yeah, I get this little textured PLA print. Now, if you have a flat bed, a smooth bed, I should say, then it's actually going to look almost a little squished for PLA. And this does change material to material. But simply put, if it looks like it's thin and it's starting to not bind to the bed, or it's starting to hover a little bit over, then you're too high. If you're starting to squish it to the point where not only is it flat and kind of bowing outwards, but as you start doing your rings around, your print's actually going to start lifting, or you're going to start seeing bumps where you're crossing over your lines. And that's the biggest area of fine-tuning you're ever going to want to do on your printer. So if you are seeing that squishing on the second layer, I would definitely spend the time and redo the bed leveling, as we featured several times before. Use your wheels, use your piece of paper or a feeler gauge at 0.01 millimeters, I think it is, and just get that first layer down, because as you know, the first layer is always the foundation to a good print. See, look at, I remember that for once.
Next question. The next question comes from Joe M. Is there any good inexpensive 3D camera around? Now, I'm not sure what you mean about a 3D camera. Are you talking about 3D scanning, or are you talking about monitoring your 3D print? Because if you're doing that, there's the one right there that I recommend.
Now, if you're talking about 3D scanning, those are mutually exclusive. Either pick a good camera or pick an inexpensive one. It's not going to be the mid-range. There is one that I have briefly viewed at Spool 3D before. That's about 1,900 Canadian.
It's the Creality.
Fantastic. Is that one Creality?
Yeah,
it's
sure
literally
is.
a tablet with a 3D camera built in, and yeah, it does a stellar job of 3D scanning. But it's also $1,900.
Yep.
Now, you can get 3D scanners. I've gotten ones. Well, there's the Kinect, which is these days probably $25 for an Xbox One version, or even cheaper for the 360. It'll scan a human fine, but the precision is not plus or minus 1 millimeter. It's plus or minus a couple millimeters, and if you're doing fine details, it won't do the job. There's also different commercial 3D scanners that I've played with that's $300-400. It's all designed for major room depth and not macro depth, so you're not going to get that intrinsic little detail. And then we finally get into photogrammetry, which is the computerized method of reconstructing a 3D mesh using your camera, a standard 2D camera, with, and I'm not joking here, hundreds upon hundreds of photos to get the correct depth maps. And there's programs like Meshroom that I've played with a little bit. It is way beyond me, to be honest with you. it's not my realm, and for a lot of the stuff that I'd be scanning, I'd be better off to construct it from the ground up using my own photo references.
Now,
But if you guys have had experience with photogrammetry, please let me know.
you also have my scanner at your house, my little
I
tabletop
do
one,
actually. Yes, I do. Where did I move it to? Oh,
which
it's
is
behind me in the closet.
which
Yeah,
is
I haven't tried
basically
it.
an Arduino controlled webcam with a turning little bed. It's not great. It's got a couple of lasers. It's not great. I'm going to tell you, instead of going and buying a $150 or $160 desktop scanner, which will only scan things about that big and will only scan one plane, so it won't get the top and it won't get all the undercuts. You're better off if you can get a hold of an Xbox 360 Generation 1 with the power cord and the USB, and download a piece of software called Scanect. And you'll be able to do some remarkable things with just that unit. And it will work great. We've done it. They've turned out really good. I think I have one here. As a matter of fact, I do have one here. Hang on a sec.
Well, Richard goes and looks at it. Yeah, photogrammetry, it's an art, to be honest with you. And I think a lot of guys have, set up studios that can do it much better for you for the one-offs. I've got miniature figures. I don't have any of them here, unfortunately, right now, where I do want to scan them as a point of reference, but I can't justify the money to buy an entire scanning rig. So this may be one of the things, similar to how you want to sell 3D printing services. Maybe you can barter with somebody who does 3D scanning. Or maybe you can look for someone who has a 3D scanner, and it might be cheaper for the one-off to use their high-end machine for your one-off than it is for you to attempt it at home. But exploring is half the fun.
This is a scan of my nephew that was done with the Xbox 360 Scanect using the Scanect software.
It's a great little piece of software.
This has got most of the detail. Now, this was not rendered at the highest quality. This was rendered at probably medium quality. So if this is medium quality, just imagine what you can get at high quality.
It is. It's a pretty cool technique. Now, with that, of course, we're talking an entire human here. And if we were to print that at 1x1, you'd see a lot of the polygon data. And that's where we're getting into, is how detailed do you need your 3D scan?
Right.
I'm going to be honest with you. There is no difference. In fact, the Kinect itself was proven when it came out to operate like a $1,000 plus scanner. So if you buy that, it's going to do you pretty much just as good as at least any 3D scanner on the market, up to about $400 or $500.
Okay, we've
TK
got
saying, Recap Pro is a great photogrammetry application.
There you go.
Actually grab that, and I'm going to try that. Pulling out the SLRs, and we'll see how it works.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. Thanks for that referral on that.
Knack 3D Design says, can't wait to see how they cover the first layer on belt printers once everyone has one, LOL. We actually might be getting one here in the studio to test. We'll let you know what happens with it. We'll see how it works out.
Yeah, it's... I've seen some videos from, I think it was Knack 3D put them out.
Yeah.
I could be wrong on that, but yeah, it's a cool concept, don't get me wrong, but there's two aspects of a belt 3D printer to bear in mind. Number one, you're not going to have as much build volume as you think you're going to have. It is designed in such a way that you can do continuously long models, but the photos of, I think it's a CR-30, everything I've seen so far, it still has roughly about a 300 by 300 actual effective build plate size. But of course, your Z is infinite, assuming that you position your model sideways. Now, when it comes to mass production, it's a game changer. It's great. However, I haven't seen any videos of long-term, let's say, printing 1,000 benchies. And I want to see if that surface belt material can hold up to that, or if you're going to start needing to clean it often enough, in which case, are you really that better off? You tell me. Let me know in the comments.
Yeah. We got to get to a couple more questions here. Ohio Teen Tech, he says, hi guys, I'm having a Halloween competition on Thingiverse. I want to invite you all and you can post your link here. Yeah, great.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. I love team design competitions.
Jonah
Because I
Ands.
can't browse Thingiverse for the life of me right now.
Jonah Ands says, any advice on how to send two commands to an SKR Mini running Marlin from a Linux machine? You should be able to open up Print Run or any of those programs.
Pronterface.
Pronterface
Yeah,
in
yeah. Pronterface is what I've used on Linux.
Yeah,
Go
you
ahead.
can use that on Linux, and that you should be able to send commands to the printer by hooking your computer up to the printer's USB port.
If you really want to go old school, you can use Miniterm, or you can actually download. I believe there's a version of Putty which runs within Wine, and I've used that several times for much easier serial interfacing. Now that is bare bones serial interfacing. So that
Yeah,
you type in G28, hit enter, your printer does it, but there's no select down menus. I haven't checked Print Run to see if it. I think it does have a Linux variant. I could be
it
wrong on
does
that,
have
but
well, Print Run
worst
and Pronterface are the same thing. They're just two
or if
different
you if
names.
you yeah, if you have an okay computer, you can download Cura for Linux, and Cura for Linux has that entire command console that you can run in there too. So usually, as I said, I don't run too much stuff full time over USB, but I'm usually using Pronterface/Print Run as my serial interface to it. Now, this is just a community warning because it happens to me every time. Make sure when you're trying to use these print run tools or anything that you have Cura closed, they have Visual Studio closed, etc., because they like to seize control of your serial ports. And so
Yeah,
often I would get an access is denied error, and it's because Cura, even though it's not saying anything for that serial port, automatically binds to any USB serial devices, assuming it's a printer. It's a little vicious, and I'm hoping to find write an issue on their Git to maybe give it as a setting so you can turn off that serial encapsulation.
there you go. It looks like questions have dried up a little bit, so I'm going to let people know where they can find us. Let me just go over to
On
this.
this chat, you guys are much more chatty than I'm used to tonight, and I
Yeah,
really appreciate it because
yeah, me too.
I'm not complaining right now because I've actually got my big printer almost working. So
So here's what you
now,
guys can do if you're looking to follow us anywhere on social media or find us or that sort of thing. You can find us at Facebook at under groups, the first layer. You can find us on Instagram. We try and post to Instagram as much as possible. Cleveland IM is where you'll find me on Twitter. I don't post anything there, but when we put out new episodes, so I'm pretty lackluster on Twitter. I'm not a tweeter. And then, of course, you can always find us here on YouTube. Now, for those of you that want to send us questions, and if you do not send questions to questions@thefirstlayer.com or ask them here in the chat, chances are they're not going to get brought up here on the show. So I want to make sure that you guys know that if you're going to send us questions for our live streams on Saturday nights, usually, send them to questions@thefirstlayer.com. If you don't send them there, chances are they'll get missed or they'll end up in our recycle bin or something. So please, please, if you have a question for us to read out on the show, to get you an answer, if we have to do a little bit of research, that's a good way to get us to get the right answer for you, is send your questions to questions@thefirstlayer.com, and we will read that question live on the air and answer it for you. And there we go.
that's it. I was just asking Knack 3D Designs because I was curious about that belt surface on these new printers because that's true. Honestly, guys, that's going to be my number one concern. Is if bed adhesion is trash, and you're doing continuous printing, you can get into a heap of trouble really, really quickly. So,
Yeah.
Creality seems to be the first ones out of the gate with a mass-produced belt version on the consumer end. And from what I've seen so far, it does look cool. But it's going to be changing how we talk a lot about our bed leveling and so forth with the angles it goes at. But the philosophy will always be the same, to make sure that your nozzle's sitting at that air gap and that your surface is nice and clean for it to have something to grip to. Because if it doesn't grip to the surface, it's going to grip to itself. It's going to then grip to the nozzle, then to the block, then to your fans. And before you know it, your machine's kaput for a while.
Yeah, you'll have a nice big blob of plastic, which you don't want. And believe me, I've had it, and it's a pain in the backside.
We've all had that happen, I'm sure. I've seen some photos out there.
I'm just
Brad
quickly
Pond,
scanning here.
yeah, Brad Pond, one last simpler question. What's your best recommended filament brand?
Or does it vary based on the material you're using? Well,
100% it does, but
it does. There are brands that both Brian and I have used that tend to be go-tos for us. For a long time, of course, for me, it was Spool 3D. However, I have come across other brands that I really, really do like. Filaments.ca's brand, they're EcoTough. Very good stuff. Really like it. It has never failed me yet. Arion printer filament, very good stuff. As a matter of fact, that right there, that little test that I did recently, which you guys will be getting a review on this stuff pretty soon, that's their PETG. And to be perfectly honest, I'm printing that PETG on the stock Ender 3 V2. There's been no modifications, no hot end changes, no tube changes, no nothing. It is right stock, and it is handling it like a champ.
And what temperature are you running that at?
Well, this started at 230, 235, 240, 245, 250. And I found right here at that 240 was my best adhesion. I got the best bridging at 240, and the lines look just beautiful. And I got no stringing at 240.
Oh,
so yeah. But I'll be giving you guys a rundown of that.
Yeah, no, I always ask about that because a lot of people, you got to realize that the V2 comes, I believe, with Capricorn tubing, does it not?
No.
Oh, it's not.
doesn't.
Oh,
no.
Okay.
No, it doesn't
Okay.
come with Capricorn at all.
I always say be careful when you're going over 240 unless you have a tubing like Capricorn in there or an all metal extruder. That's just a generic warning. You proceed at your own risk, but sometimes a lot of this PFTE liners that are shipped with these printers will tend to start to warp at that temperature, and that is irreversible. So you got to cut off a piece of Bowden tube, put a new piece in, or chop it off and see if it's still long enough. It's just a generic warning because I've had too many people think, oh, it can print PETG, and then you melt your tubing.
Yeah. Jerry's got a question from 3D Printing and Painting, and I think we need to charge him for this question. He says, hey, Richard, who's your barber? My wife is my barber. When I go to haircuts like this, when I let it grow, then I go to see my real barber. Yeah, but in the era of COVID, my wife is now my barber. So we just put on a number 2 guard and we're done. So that will be $10.
It's been a very toasty summer up here. So any kind of relief hair wise, especially right now, you'll do what you can, sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, you bet.
Brody Wallace is saying, just chat bouncing around here. Talked to you guys last week about Creality Slicer and Cura. Been using Creality, but getting artifacting or bumps or boogers. Have any tips? Step 1, actually, I'm going to tell you what something we said earlier. Go over to Michael at Teaching Tech's recent video about printer calibration and download and start with his cube. And I'll tell you why. So the cube that he's used was sliced up in Simplify 3D. But the web browser, what it does is you type in your nozzle size, your print bed size, and then your applicable parameters if you run an ABL or whatever, and it generates the exact same G code from person to person. Nozzle size, obviously, it'll manipulate the numbers a bit. But that test will show you right away if you're having an issue with your printer or an issue with your slicer. If it comes out absolutely beautiful, we've got a slicer issue. If it comes out gnarly, your slicing settings may be fine. But if you're seeing boogers, bumps, things like that, that usually says to me that you have a partial clog in your nozzle where it's not enough to cause it to click and bounce back, but it's enough that you build up back pressure. And as you're building up back pressure, it thins out. And then when it overcomes that pressure threshold, that's just arbitrarily based off how much clogged it is, it comes out in a big burst of liquid. And you end up getting burnt pieces and blobs and so forth. The only other time I see blobbing is when you're saturating the slicer, and that doesn't happen too often.
Okay, so see those two cubes?
Focus! There we go.
There we go. One of them is better than the other one. One of them has been calibrated. One of them is baseline. You tell me which is which.
Exactly.
And I will tell you which is which. That one there. Let's see if we focus. Cover up Superman's face. There we go.
There you go. Oh, there we go.
So that is the baseline. You can see there's a lot of gapping and a very thin top layer. This is after calibration. The gapping has been reduced. Come on, there we go. The gapping has been reduced, and there's a much better top layer.
Don't worry, guys. We're working on getting you a macro camera. I've got one here that I've just been having some issues.
There you go.
Had to focus on my side. That was the secret.
There you go. How do you get Superman's face out of the shot? So
yeah. I mean, that the baseline is to make sure that your frame is aligned and that you have no nozzle clogs, to be honest. It won't be the perfect cube right off the bat. In fact, if it does come out perfect, well, then your printer is perfectly dialed in. But it's designed to show, basically, here is a very simple G-code file that is repeatable that you can put on. You can basically transfer that to every single one of your machines and it'll print. If it's the same nozzle size, even if the bed's bigger or smaller, it'll print a little bit off center. But it's designed so that everybody has a baseline, and that's why it's called baseline, for you to start out with and compare against. And Michael's got a photo of his. You'll see in that really cool page. It quite literally shows his cube, and it's not perfect, but it's straight. And it doesn't look wobbly, and it's not clogging. So give that a go. Let us know how your successes are with that.
Yep, I agree.
Joanne, do you two ever disagree on things and argue? All the time.
All the time.
We've been bickering tonight. It's there are a number of things that are a matter of opinion, and that's why I try to say it's my opinion. And what do you think, Richard? Because I spout a lot of crap sometimes too, and I need to be called on it. But based off my experience, that's what I share with you guys. I'm not telling you this is fact. If I am, then I will say this is fact. No, this is my experience. Yeah.
Everything that you and I have put out on this show over the past 3 years has been from our personal experiences. And I learned how to 3D print seat of pants. I really did. I've been doing this now for about 4 years. It is my full-time job, making these shows, creating new content, learning new stuff so that I can let you guys know what works and what doesn't work, or what's worked and what doesn't work for me. And maybe you might have success with something that I haven't, and that's okay too. We try and give you as concise information as we can and as practical information as we can. We're not experts. We just know what we've done and we know what works for us, and we try and give you guys the best possible advice that we can on your 3D printing problems, whether that be hardware, software, or even your prints. I mean, not all my prints turn out perfectly. I'll be the first one to admit that. Here's a great example. This is resin. This is Frankenstein head. That's resin. And there's a lot wrong with that. You can see there's a couple of gouges in the back that missed. So, not everything turns out perfect. I can get it to look good, like Superman in the background, but not everything works out for us. We're just humans.
They can be a struggle. Yeah. And, sometimes we're nitpicky. I mean, right now, you may or may not, maybe I can show this. Let's see if this will work here. Focus. This is actually a cheap, you don't have to even go full screen. We'll get a tiny little square here, but this is my cheap new camera from Amazon to try and look at macro up close for different issues and different board designs there. So, I'm starting to go to this point of reviewing different little details of my prints to look for things that I'm missing, because point 4 is absolutely amazing for hiding defects. And when you go up to a 0.6 and a 0.8, it's like, what went wrong with my printer? It's got to be the nozzle. No. It's simply your error has been multiplied by the same factor of your nozzle increase.
And you know, recently I have a new client, and we've been talking back and forth quite often. And he recently contacted me about an issue he was having with a print that just, for whatever reason, when he started the print, his machine just went wacky. And I told him to try a new SD card, because usually SD cards can go bad fairly quickly when they read and write constantly. Or try a different file. He tried a different file. He resliced a new file, totally different from the one he was trying to print, and everything went stellar. So remember that when you're downloading files, not all files are created equally. And that is a big problem on Thingiverse for the most part. You can find great files. Some things work tremendously, and then other things, just because of the way that they slice or something that's in the original model itself, just makes the commands go foobar. And at the end of the day, it's not your printer, it's not you, it's just a simple miscalculation in the file.
Absolutely. Just addressing Knack, in regards to the camera for the zoom, it is a super cheap Amazon camera. I'll see if I can find the listing. Oh yeah, I paid $33 Canadian for it. It's got 640 by 480 resolution. It's a hunk of junk, but it really does the job. So if you guys want to see some more macro stuff from us too, let me know. I've posted the link for Amazon Canada in the chat, but I'm sure you can find it globally. And yeah, we can take a closer look at some of these different things up close and see what, you know, a print looks like at that level of zoom. As I said, it's not ultra high resolution, but for $30, it gets me close enough.
Yep, exactly. All right, trial and error, Joseph Jolly says. Absolutely. Everything in this hobby is trial and error. You're never going to get things perfect the first time. If you do, congratulations. I don't get things perfect all the time, and I've got 12 printers in this house that we use on a regular basis, and they don't all turn out.
Absolutely. I'm just going to check in because everyone's saying I sound terrible.
Yeah, it sounds like you tore a tweeter.
Oh, weird. Jeez.
It's like you got some sort of modulation going on.
That would be a negative, but is it okay now or no?
It's better.
Okay, I pulled down the gain, but you know what? I'm just going to disconnect and reconnect with you guys. I will be back momentarily.
Okay. Sometimes these things happen.
Welcome to technology. vMix is not great.
Yeah, Brian, you sound like you're in a tin can. Oh, well, he'll be back. Until he comes back, we'll just look at a frozen image of him. So, yeah, at the end of the day, you know what? It's all a matter of... Let me turn my mic here a little bit. My mic was off center. Yeah, at the end of the day, not all your prints are going to turn out. You know, I'm working with resin these days, and like with this little gal right here, this poison ivy that I'm going to be working on and showing you guys how to paint at some point in time. You know, I have problems with resin. I have resin failures all the time. I don't get it right every time. Just dry brush 30 models, including failed prints. Way to go, TK. Nice. Joseph Jolly, 3D printing have to have a lot of patience. Yes. If you're an impatient person, this is not the hobby for you. If you are a patient person, then of course this is the hobby for you. And it doesn't look like Brian's come back yet. Hopefully he will be soon. Best all-metal hot end. Joe, I can't really give you a best. I can tell you what I like. My preference for any Creality style product or even Creality product is the Micro Swiss all-metal hot end upgrade for CR-10 and Creality and Creality-based products. I also do like the E3D V6. It is a premium product. You are don't buy an E3D clone, buy the real thing if you're going to do that. That's my opinion anyway. Tim, you are so welcome for the help today. Anytime, I'm always available to try and help you with your problems. TK says, reviewing the Photon Mono at the moment. It's a nice machine. Yes, it is a nice machine. I don't have the Photon Mono, but I have the mono version of the Phrozen Sonic Mini, which has a mono screen. And that's what this Poison Ivy from Arkham Knights was printed on. Brian says he's got interference. Well, we're almost out of time anyway. Brian, stay in the chat. We're almost out of time anyway, so we'll just keep going from here. I'll just go to where you can find us. There we go. How about we use that one for now? Yeah, getting used to that fast setting is maddening a little bit. Yeah, I agree with you on that one for sure. I want to let you guys know that our store is open, and you can go to shopthefirstlayer.com. We've got some t-shirts there that you can help support the show with. I have a t-shirt that's going out this week, as a matter of fact, and to one of our supporters. And if you want to support the show, there's plenty of ways that you can do it. You can do it by liking this video tonight. You can also give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down. It don't matter. You can also leave us a comment after the live stream is over. That also helps. Share it with your friends. Share it on your social media. We do really appreciate all of you guys, and without you, we wouldn't be at over 20,000 subscribers. And you guys are great, and we love you for that. And just keep it up. Keep sharing. Kieran, Claude, thanks, guys. Appreciate your time and wisdom. You are always welcome. We do love having you guys around, and we do love doing these live streams every Saturday night. I know it's Sunday, and next week we'll be on Sunday as well, but we will be returning to our regular Saturday night schedule very, very soon. So with that said, I want to thank everybody for showing up tonight. Thank you very much for all of your questions. Thank you guys for your super chats tonight. They go a long way to help us produce new content. Smash that like button. Share it with your friends. And until next time, my friends, remember that the first layer is always your foundation to a great print. I'm going to see you again on Wednesday.